March 1967. The US Defense Department is hiding a deadly secret. Following a decade of uprisings in the war-torn jungles of southern Vietnam, the Viet Cong has successfully taken a third of its territory. And as the war progresses to its deadliest years, the US Army has no choice but to switch to an unusual offensive tactic. A weapon so destructive it will disfigure the very landscape of Indochina, and so controversial it will trigger a worldwide panic. This is the story of how a tiny ice crystal was turned into a weapon, and the secret warfare in the sky that changed forever the rules of war. This is the story of Vincent Schaefer. So, what is this ice weapon that the US military had secretly unleashed? And more importantly, how destructive is it that it compelled the entire world to change its rules of war? To understand what desperation that forced the US to use this weapon, we have to go back. 1967, Dong Hoi, North Vietnam. The US military is on the edge. As the Vietnam War rolls down to its full scale, a deep frustration is festering inside the Pentagon. A problem that would corner them into a devastating decision. A weapon that would rival even God himself. 2 months after gaining its independence against the French colonial rule, the newly independent state of Vietnam was severed into two rival ideologies. The Communist North, led by Ho Chi Minh, and the anti-communist South, led by Ngo Dinh Diem. While there is a clear demarcation line that separates these two Vietnams on the map, in reality, this border was merely an illusion on the ground. You see, hiding amongst the southern population are not only their citizens and refugees, but something more. Remnants of the Communist Party left behind in the South. A group that would be most notoriously known by the name as Viet Cong. From 1954 to 1965, the Viet Congs would see their numbers rise from a mere 50,000 to 1 million, and lead several uprisings, capturing virtually a third of the South. Now, at the early stage of the war, the United States maintained a strict hands-off policy, assisting the South to fight for themselves. But following the conspiratorial unprovoked naval attack by northern Vietnam of a stationed US warship at the Gulf of Tonkin, the Tonkin Resolution would be passed, legalizing the American forces to join the war and reach their true primary objective: search and destroy of the Viet Cong. An objective that would prove to be rather difficult. Yes, while the US and the South far outnumbered them and had the technological advantage, the Viet Congs had two secret weapons up their sleeves. First, they fought through an unconventional method called guerrilla warfare, a tactic whereby the Viet Congs would employ ruthless hit-and-run ambushes, deadly traps, and civilian terrorism, all to disrupt the enemy's military activities. But what makes them truly deadly is their second advantage: their supply lines. You see, warfare is not only a battle of firepower, but also a battle of logistics. And the Viet Congs have one major, indestructible supply line. A massive 16,000-kilometer network of hidden tracks, dirt roads, and subterranean tunnels carving through the jungles of Laos and Cambodia, where bullets, food, and medical supplies flow constantly from the north. The jugular vein of the communist insurgency. The Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, as casualties started to balloon on both sides, it was apparent from the beginning that the US Army could not continue playing defense against such an elusive enemy. They realized they have to cut the Viet Congs from their lifeline of support. In short, destroy the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And to reach this objective, the US Army would launch several massive operations on this trail. The Operation Igloo White, wherein they planted acoustic and seismic sensors disguised as jungle plants to track the enemy's movements. The Operation Barrel Roll, wherein they carpet-bombed the mountain ranges of Laos, dropping 2 million tons of explosives. And horrifyingly, the controversial Operation Ranch Hand, wherein they dropped millions of barrels of a chemical called Agent Orange, a defoliant used to destroy food crops and clear the forest the Viet Cong used for cover. But to their utter and total disappointment, the Northern Army and nature seemed to work side by side. New roads seemed to be built within days, new transit caves were carved in months, and the plants seemed to recover so fast, it was as if nothing had happened. Left with no other options, the Pentagon was cornered into a new weapon. A weapon that would ultimately dictate the fate of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. A weapon that would bring the heavens down to earth. So, what exactly is this weapon, and how can it shift the tides of war? It all started 20 years ago. July 1946, Schenectady, New York. Inside the sprawling complex of the General Electric Company, a man was tasked with a massive problem to solve. His name was Vincent Schaefer, a 40-year-old assistant researcher from the same neighborhood. As a kid, Schaefer had always held a deep fascination with snow and ice crystals. He would spend most of his days observing them, recording logs of their amount of fall and location patterns. And though he never had a formal college education, dropping out of school at the age of 15 to support his family, Schaefer would work tirelessly, working his way up from being a mere apprentice machinist to becoming a top research assistant to Nobel Prize-winning chemist Irving Langmuir. And the problem he was tasked to solve: aircraft icing. You see, during the early development phase of aviation, when planes reached high altitudes, supercooled water droplets in the clouds would instantly freeze and accumulate on the plane's structure. This heavy ice accumulation then would weigh down the aircraft or blocked its engines, leading to fatal accidents. And his one task: prevent this ice formation. While conducting an experiment on a hot July afternoon, he faced an unusual problem. He had this giant modified home freezer in his lab, which he used to simulate the atmospheric temperatures in the sky. And the problem was, it was not cold enough. And to make the temperature drop faster, he decided to throw a piece of dry ice inside. Out of curiosity, he blew a gust of wind inside. And what appeared next astounded him. A dense blob of mist with bluish hue, filled with millions of microscopic ice crystals, slowly formed. He had just achieved the opposite of what he was supposed to do. He created ice crystals. In other words, snow. Later on, another scientist on the team, Bernard von Gott, would discover that another chemical, silver iodide, could produce the exact same phenomenon that the dry ice had exhibited. And that brings us right back to the dark skies of Southeast Asia. Because that exact chemical, silver iodide, is the very same substance that this plane is carrying right now over the sky of Laos. So, why would an American warplane carry a substance meant to create snow into a tropical jungle? And how exactly would it destroy the Ho Chi Minh Trail? Following this accidental discovery, Schaefer and his team were secretly contacted by the military to test it on a much bigger playing field. The sky. Up in the sky, there are water particles that float aimlessly in a strange suspended state, called the supercooled state. Water that remains completely liquid even below the freezing point. This supercooled liquid is what we know as our regular harmless cloud. You see, they just kind of exist there, floating in the sky. But if you mix tiny microscopic particles inside them, like atmospheric dust, these water droplets instantly cling to them and condense into a crystal ice. And silver iodide does the exact same job. Slowly, this water crystal grows bigger and bigger and heavier until gravity pulls them down and they fall. Rain. Schaefer had discovered how to modify the weather. He discovered how to create artificial rain. And this was the radical solution the American forces resorted to finally cut off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. If they couldn't stop the North Vietnamese supply chains with conventional weapons, they would let the environment do it. And its name: Operation Popeye. The objective of the mission was simple: produce sufficient amount of rain, enough to make the truck traffic impassable, by triggering landslides, overflowing the river pass with flood, and turning roads into muddy swamps. Over the course of 5 years, from 1967 to 1972, the US military escalated this conflict into a full-scale weather war, dropping over 47,000 canisters of silver iodide, spread across more than 2,600 covert flying missions, all flown under the guise of routine weather checkups. And the results were unprecedented and devastating. Declassified military intelligence reports estimated that the engineered clouds successfully increased local rainfall by up to 30% in targeted areas, artificially extending the brutal monsoon rainy season by an extra month and a half. And in one extreme instance, a seeded storm dumped a mind-numbing 22 centimeters of rain in just 4 hours. Almost 25 billion gallons of water in every square kilometer in just a single afternoon. The once peaceful forest became a suffocating trap of waist-deep mud, catastrophic landslides, and overflowing rivers. With the rain drowning the land it was supposed to nurture. But can a war, waged in the sky, stay hidden in the shadows forever? In March 1971, a journalist named Jack Anderson had learned about the operation and broke the secret in his news column, exposing it to the whole world. At first, the US Defense Department strongly denied it, but as public outrage mounted to the extremes, they had no choice but to admit to it. This catastrophic confession stunned the world, as a technology of this magnitude had never occurred to the minds of the common public, let alone weaponizing it for wars, which then led the United Nations to pass a treaty banning the use of any weather modification in warfare. Now, after decades have passed, some lingering doubts still exist in the minds of the public. Was Operation Popeye really that effective? Southeast Asia's monsoon season have been long and volatile, which could have coincided with the operation. Some historians believe that the data of the military might have not been accurate. Maybe the Pentagon did influence the weather, or maybe not. But whether they truly control it remain uncertain. And as for Vincent Schaefer, his path diverged from the military long before the war. In 1954, he left General Electric and went to the academe, devoting his days to spreading his love and dream for science and nature. A love that would travel up until today, because his discovery, cloud seeding, is still used across the globe, not as a weapon of war anymore, but to help and sustain life. And a dream of a water droplet peacefully falling from the sky. So, that is it. The mystery of the seeded ice crystal. A story of how a child's innocent fascination with snow was turned into a weapon. And though it was tainted with blood, the same rain falls again, bringing life to everyone. If you don't want to miss our next bizarre mystery, you can join us by hitting that button down below. In the meantime, feel free to check our dusty library, brimming with strange and unbelievable stories. And as always, stay curious.